Section 4 in your lab assignment for temperature controls and patterns talks about the California temperature transect. I do have in our learning management system instructions on how to go digital as you're doing this portion. There's also instructional written instructions as well. So there's a number of different resources that you can use if you'd like to do this part digitally. There's also a template that has all of the data already in it in Google Sheets. And that's going to be Google spreadsheet software. If you would like to go old school, that's totally fine. There are some calculations that we need to do on this particular table, and then some plotting that we need to do. So we're going to go through and demonstrate both of those. I do some examples right here, but for the temperature range, basically what we want to see is the July temperature minus the January temperature. The idea there is that the difference of our overall temperatures is going to be one of our warmest months subtracting minus one of our coolest months. And so it goes through, it illustrates 58.4 minus 50.7. Where'd you get those numbers? Right here is 58.4 minus 50.7. And that's going to give us our temperature range. You're going to go through and calculate the rest of those. So I did those first two for you, and you're going to find some patterns as you move through there. Okay, that's wonderful. These next instructions basically are telling us how to take this information and plot it out on this funky guy. Okay, now here's the weird part about this graph is that there are two Y scales. So we have our X scale, and our scale going across the bottom is going to be our distance from the ocean. However, going up this side is going to be temperature. Now, what are we going to plot there? We're going to be plotting our January temperature along that axis, and we're going to be plotting our July temperature along that axis. But there's three lines that we need to do, and that other one that we need to do is going to be elevation. So for elevation, we're going to be using this scale over here along here. Right? Before we get too much further, let's explore a little bit how much each one of these little lines, these little tick marks actually mean for each one of our scales. So there's 0 and there's 20, and it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 gaps between those. So it is 20 miles divided by 5 means that each one of these lines is worth 4 miles. Okay, perfect. Okay, so let's take a look at temperature. We're going to have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, up to 10 degrees. So I have 10 degrees divided by 5 means that each one of those lines is worth 2 degrees. Right, and that's going to be 2 degrees Fahrenheit. In this exercise, we're doing it all Fahrenheit because those are numbers that we're familiar with as we're moving through. Let's check out over here as well then for elevation. Again, we're going to be starting at 0. We go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that puts us at 1,000 feet. So 1,000 feet divided by 5 means that each one of these lines is worth 200 feet. Okay, now, the first line that we want to do is going to be distance from the ocean. That's going to be going across. And then we want to get in the elevation for those particular locations. The instructions recommend that you do that with a black pencil. Doing a pencil is probably a good idea because if you do mess up, it's a little bit easier to erase, but you can always just reprint another sheet if you're going to be doing this old school paper style. So what do we need to do? The first two have been put in there. You'll notice, right? So each one is worth 4 miles, that first location. And I'm going to take this guy just so that I can focus a little bit better and look at it like this. So 1 mile over, right? 1/4 of the way across that line. At 30 feet, right? This first one, if you remember over here, this is going to be 200, 400, 600, right? And 800 every 200 feet, right? And then 1,000. So really, we're going to be below that first line until we get all the way over here to Rockland, 102 miles. So that's going to be like barely coming up above the line because, honestly, the elevation doesn't change all that much until we hit the Sierras. Because Highway 80 cuts through the hills, cuts through the coastal range. Okay, cool. So this one has been done. This one has been done. So let's take a look at this next one. It's 16 miles, right? So that would be 4, 8, 12, 16. Good. And it's up 60 feet in elevation. Well, halfway across there is 2. So it's basically going to be right there. And as I do this, I'm just going to put a little mark so that I get an idea of what that location is. So we have Richmond. We have Martinez, which is going to be 28, and then up to 40. So again, like a quarter of the way up. Mark that with Mart. Fairfield is at 43.
43, and at 40 again, right there. Vaca is 50 and 100, 50 and halfway up. Vaca, Davis is at 69 and 60, 64, 68, 69, and 60.
For me, it is helpful to have all of these guys labeled, and we'll show why in a bit, right? Because what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be plotting this line and this line, and it just makes it easier instead of having to look up the elevation for each spot to just put the dot right above there. So let's continue.
Sacramento is at 80 and 20. Rockland is at 102 and 250. 102. Oh, we have to go above the line. Auburn is at 114, 116, 114, and 12. 1290. Look at us go. So let's see what's there. And then 11, 12, 90. Halfway up there puts us at Auburn. Colfax is at 130, 2410. 130, 20, 24, 10. I'm going to put a little line right there. And that was Colfax. And I'm not writing out the entire name. I'm just abbreviating this a little bit. Blue is at 146, 144, 146. At 50, 52, 80. 52, 80. We'll put it there. And that's Blue. Donner Summit, 163. And 72.
And Reno, our last destination, at 192 and 4,400. We'll put it about right there, and that is Reno. Perfect. With our straight edge now, we're going to be connecting some dots. Perfect. Okay, now, it looks very, very steep. Sure it does, because this is going to be miles and this is feet. So really, if we could stretch that way out, then that's going to be significantly different. And yeah, it does get higher there and lower there and a little bit higher there, which is helpful as we're looking at our graph, but not essential. Cool. So that takes care of our distance from the ocean and the elevation. And I was kind of happy to get all these guys labeled. Here's what I'm going to do next. I'm going to fold this guy over so that right next to the name of the location is the temperature there. Now I'm going to be using this particular scale, and I'm going to be putting in my January temperature. So 40, 50, and each one of these is worth 2 degrees, so 50.7, right above San Francisco coastline, San Francisco Mission. I'm going to use these guys. Instead of going back and trying to measure the distance again, I'm just going to go right above each one of those names. Okay. So we have our San Francisco coastline at 50.7. So there's 50, there's 52. That's about 51. So I'm going to put my dot right there in the middle. The other one is actually at 51, so I'll put it there. 49.9 above Richmond. Martinez. And I'm even going to line it up here so I see Mart there, and then I can figure out my temperature there. Martinez was at 42, 4, 6, 7.
46, 42, 4, 6. Vaca is at 45.6. Davis is basically 45. Sacramento is 46. Rockland is at 43. 40, 42, 44, so 43 should be right there. Auburn is at 45. Colfax is at 44 and a half. 40, 42, 44, and we get blue is at 37. So 30, 32, 4, 6, 7. Brown is at 27, 6. 22, 4, 6, 7. Good. Brown and white is at 27. And come down. Truckee is at 27 as well. Boca is at 25.
And Reno is up to 32. 32. Again, connect our dots. Perfect, and our last task is to do the July temperature there. So I'm going to fold this guy again, fold it about right there, and I'm going to flop this guy over so that it's right next to the cities like that again, and off I go. 58.4.
59.7, 62.9, 63, 19, 72, Fairfield, 72.4, Arkansas, 75.7, 76, Kansas, 74.6, 24, unit. Sacramento is at 75, Rockland is at 77, 77, Auburn, 77 as well, Colfax, and 76, Big Canyon is at 68, our summit is basically at 59, 58.8, and our lake is at 60.8.
It's messy right in here, right? So I'm going to be trying to get my dot in there. That's an important reason to do different colors. Truckee is at 61.
Boca is at 60, and Reno is at 7.4.
And there we go. We have our distance from the ocean for all of the locations. The only time that we actually cared or that we measured it was when we were putting in the elevation. So we have the elevation using that scale over there. Then we have our two different temperature lines, one for January, one for July. And we're traveling all the way from 0 to 190 something miles inland over the Sierras and seeing how our temperature changes.